They say a courtroom is where justice speaks loudest, but that morning all it did was whisper cruelty. Judge Ronald Beckett didn't even let her finish a sentence. Didn't matter that she walked in wearing her nursing pins. Didn't matter that she stood straight, spoke clearly, and never once raised her voice. He saw a black woman in a courtroom and decided she must be the problem. Her name was Naomi Ellis, 41 years old, former combat medic turned trauma nurse. That morning she was the defendant, accused of assaulting a man in a grocery store parking lot. A man who, by the way, had thrown himself onto the pavement after calling her a black dictator for asking him to step back. Yeah, that happened. The judge didn't care. The prosecutor, slick-haired and smug, sat grinning like it was all already decided. Naomi's public defender tried to object. Beckett shut him down with one look. "You'll speak when spoken to, counselor." But what nobody in that courtroom knew was that the FBI had been watching, and they were about to walk in through that very door with a warrant, a badge, and a reckoning. But hang on, before we get there, let me back up a sec. 3 weeks earlier, Harlan's Grocery, a quiet Sunday. Naomi had just finished a double shift, hair still tucked into a bun, hospital badge clipped to her coat. She was grabbing almond milk and protein bars. That's it. As she stepped out of the store, a red-faced man in his 50s walked straight into her path, no mask, breathing heavy. She politely said, "Sir, you're going the wrong way." He stopped, smirked, then barked out, "Don't tell me what to do, black dictator." Before she could react, he flailed backward, threw himself onto the pavement, and shouted, "She hit me." Security came running. He pointed. Naomi stood frozen. That was the moment it started. And now, 3 weeks later, she was on trial. The courtroom reeked of mold and something else. Something like old injustice. As Naomi sat down, she noticed a white deputy mumble under his breath, "Here comes the angry nurse." She didn't flinch. She'd heard worse. In combat. See, what the courtroom didn't know, what Beckett never bothered to ask, was that Naomi wasn't just any nurse. She'd served 2 tours in Kandahar. She'd carried wounded soldiers through gunfire, sewn up children with her bare hands, and learned to silence fear under mortar blasts. The training was brutal. Boots at 4 a.m., gas chamber drills. Dragging a 180-pound dummy up a sand dune while your legs cramp and your lungs beg you to stop. But you don't stop. Because out there, if you flinch, someone dies. That's the backbone Naomi brought home. That's the woman Judge Beckett insulted when he said, "You're used to chaos, aren't you, Miss Ellis? That's what your kind brings." The room went still. Even the court reporter stopped typing. Naomi didn't cry, didn't speak, just breathed. In the back row sat her daughter Jade, 17 eyes like fire gripping her phone so tightly her knuckles turned white. And sitting 1 row behind her was someone else. Officer Miguel Romero. Now he wasn't in uniform that day. Just a jacket, jeans, and a quiet sense of justice. See, Romero had been there, not in the courtroom but at the grocery store, off-duty, grocery list in hand. Saw the whole thing from his car. He saw Naomi try to step aside, saw the man lunge back like a stage actor, saw the smirk as officers took Naomi away. He filed a report quietly, but it never made it into evidence, because someone made it disappear. And now he sat there, heart-pounding, torn between the badge and the truth. Jade noticed him, didn't say a word, just sent a text to someone she hadn't spoken to in months. Darren Cole, FBI, also known as Uncle Darren, Naomi's older brother, and she added the courtroom clip. Just 14 seconds. The judge cutting her off, calling her unfit. The insult. One line in the message. "She won't fight for herself, but maybe you still can." That text would set off something bigger than anyone expected. Meanwhile, inside the courtroom, Beckett denied Naomi's request to bring in a character witness. A decorated trauma surgeon, no less. Denied, he said, "This isn't a hospital, Ms. Ellis. It's a court of law." You could feel it, the tension. The people in the gallery weren't looking at the judge anymore. They were looking at her, at the woman who sat straight, silent, not broken. And then twist number 3. Officer Romero stood up. "Your Honor, may I speak?" Beckett squinted. "Who are you?" Romero pulled out his badge. "I'm the officer who witnessed the alleged assault, and I was never called." Gasps echoed. Beckett went pale. "You are out of line." But Romero didn't back down. "I filed a statement." It vanished. The judge ordered him removed. 2 bailiffs stepped forward. But no one moved to cuff him, because the room had changed. Power had shifted. And as Beckett tried to regain control, the door opened. 2 agents stepped in. One of them, Darren Cole, walked straight up to the bench, badge out, warrant in hand. Judge Ronald Beckett, you are under investigation for obstruction of justice, abuse of authority, and repeated civil rights violations. You are hereby relieved of duty, effective immediately. The judge stuttered, "This is outrageous. You can't." But Darren cut him off. This courtroom is now under federal authority. A bailiff who'd stood behind Beckett for years quietly stepped aside. And for the first time since the trial began, Naomi Ellis stood up, not to shout, not to cry, but just to stand. And when she did, every single person in that courtroom looked at her, really looked, not as a defendant, not as a scapegoat, but as a soldier, a nurse, a woman who never backed down. And that's when the camera phones came out, because what happened next was about to go viral. The footage was everywhere within hours. By sundown, Naomi's name was trending nationwide. Not because she wanted it, but because justice, when it finally shows up after being late for years, makes noise. Big, unavoidable noise. The video showed it all. The judge's face crumbling as the warrant hit the bench, the courtroom shifting its gaze from robe to nurse, and that final piercing moment when Agent Darren Cole said, "You are relieved of duty." Social media exploded. Twitter threads broke down the case in real-time, side-by-side clips of the grocery store incident, witness testimonies, and comparisons to similar patterns in Judge Beckett's past. Hashtags like #StandWithNaomi and #BeckettMustGo flooded the platforms. Nurses, veterans, single mothers, people who'd never met Naomi were reposting clips with their own stories. "This woman is me." She held the line. "I almost didn't." She reminded me why I stayed in medicine. But not everyone was cheering. Some called her a liar, a manipulator, claimed the arrest was staged, that she weaponized race and sympathy. Cable news split down the middle. One host even asked, "Is this justice or just a witch hunt against a powerful white man?" The local sheriff's office, the same one that ignored Officer Romero's report, tried to walk the line. A spokesperson said, "We are reviewing our internal procedures regarding evidence handling," which in plain English meant, "We got caught and we're scrambling." Naomi. She didn't say much at first. Her phone didn't stop buzzing for 2 days straight. Interview requests from CNN, MSNBC, even a sit-down with Oprah's team. She turned them all down. Why? Because the courtroom had already said everything that needed saying. But she did agree to a hearing, a closed-door internal review at the state level. There, alongside her lawyer, she laid out everything. The missing reports, the pattern of over-sentencing under Judge Beckett, the security footage Romero backed up with his testimony. The legal team representing Beckett, they came out swinging, claimed Naomi was unstable, aggressive, even brought up old disciplinary complaints that had already been dismissed years ago. But then the twist hit. Ezra, the courtroom clerk, the one who had quietly handed Darren the nameplate, submitted a 40-page affidavit. Inside, detailed logs of altered records, names, dates, case files, all of it. Turns out Ezra had been building that file for years, waiting for one moment big enough to break the silence. And Naomi was it. Now, here's the thing nobody saw coming. In the middle of it all, reporters' legal drama protests out front of the courthouse, Naomi was offered a deal. Quiet settlement, no admission of guilt, her record wiped clean. A public apology drafted but never read aloud. All she had to do was sign. And she almost did, because by then she was tired. Not "I need a nap" tired, soul tired. The kind of tired you only feel after you've held your breath for too many years in too many rooms that never wanted you to speak. She sat alone that night in her apartment, lights off, the draft of the deal on her kitchen table. And that's when Jade walked in. Teenagers don't always know what to say, but sometimes they say, "Just enough." Jade sat across from her and asked, "If you sign that, what changes?" Naomi didn't answer, because she already knew. Signing that deal would clear her name, but it wouldn't clear the path for the nurses who came after her, the single moms who wouldn't have FBI agents in their family, the quiet women in loud rooms who'd be told to kneel, smile, and go home. So she tore it up. She chose to testify. She chose to fight. And the fallout. Oh, it was real. The courthouse received threats not just at her but at Romero too. He was pulled from duty for his safety. His patrol car keyed. His wife followed once on her way to work. And still, He stood by his statement. I swore to protect people, not institutions. The review board took 2 weeks. When the decision came down, Judge Beckett was permanently removed from the bench, disbarred. All 89 of his questionable cases reopened. 4 defendants released within the month. The state attorney general opened a broader civil rights investigation. And Naomi, well, she went back to work. But everything was different. In the days after she was followed, filmed at gas stations called a hero and a liar in the same breath. People left flowers outside her hospital, others left threatening notes on her car. She got emails. One said, "You didn't just save my dad's life in the ICU. You saved it again when you stood up in that courtroom." But she also got voicemails that started with, "You people always." You know how that goes. And yet, she never flinched. She spoke once at a panel held by the National Nurses Union. In front of a crowd of young nurses, mostly women, many of color, she stood up and said, "They tried to make me invisible, tried to make my calm look like guilt, my silence look like shame, my kindness look like weakness. But I remember what we were taught in combat. The quietest soldier is often the deadliest, and the most dangerous woman in the room is the one they underestimate." The room didn't clap politely. They roared. Months later, the hospital where Naomi first worked, where she once cleaned bedpans before she ever wore scrubs, unveiled a small plaque near the main entrance. It didn't have a quote, didn't list awards, just 3 words carved in steel. She held the line, and Naomi. She never asked for recognition. But every time she walks past that plaque, she straightens her back, because she knows justice doesn't always come in loud bangs and court orders. Sometimes it walks in quietly with a warrant in one hand and a memory in the other. The memory of a woman who stood when everyone else sat, who chose not to sign when signing was easier, who reminded a whole city and maybe a whole country what courage actually looks like. And now, I want to hear from you. If you were Naomi, would you have signed the deal? Would you have walked away clean or stood your ground and risked everything? Drop your thoughts in the comments, because this isn't just her story anymore. It's ours. And if this moved you even half as much as it moved us, hit that subscribe button. Tomorrow's story might just hit closer than you think.